I'm Sabina Qureshi, broadcasting live from Edmonton, Canada. And with me today are Megan Shearer from Auckland, New Zealand. Hi,
Hello.
Megan. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Glad to have you here. And Dick Larson, who's been here many times before from Los Angeles, USA. Hi, Dick. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's great that you're here. We broadcast live every second and fourth Saturday on Zoom, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch. At the end of each show, we do 30 minutes of transmission meditation. It's a free and potent group meditation for anybody over the age of 12. And we hope that you'll stick around and join us. You might really like it. And so now we're going to dive into this topic, which is fascinating. Love, a dynamic force to change the world. And we hope that you'll ask questions. We'll try to answer all of them.
The source for our information is the Ageless Wisdom Teachings. And that has been revealed by these four teachers in the last couple of centuries. The most recent being a man named Benjamin Creme from London. We all knew Benjamin Creme and actually studied under him. So we are students of the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, and it's that information that we want to add to the topic of love.
And one of the things that we always say when we talk about the Ageless Wisdom Teachings is that although for us they ring true, and we find them extremely powerful and insightful, we don't want to try to convince you of anything. We're here to share our perspective, and we ask you just to consider it and see how it resonates, if it resonates for you. So on to the big question. What is love? We all talk about it. It's in all our songs, our art, our music, our philosophy. It's the topic, really. And it's very much related to what it means to be human. We all experience love of many types in many ways. But when we talk about love from the perspective of the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, in a way, what we are describing is something that actually goes far, far beyond our usual ideas of love. And so we'd like to dive in there and start with this perspective, which is really quite vast. The idea that it's a magnetic force, an actual power, physical power, which is, as this quote says, pulls together all of the building blocks of cosmos, literally. And so what we are told by the Ageless Wisdom Teachings is that this energy, love, binds the atoms of matter together and the units of humanity. That is, it's holding everything together, literally, not just in a figurative way. And according to this teaching, our galaxies, our solar system, all of it would disappear without love. Love is holding it all together. So in that sense, all of those songs are right. I mean, they're actually saying something very true that we feel intuitively. But according to this teaching, it's a literal truth at the atomic and subatomic level.
And those who have been in a loving relationship, now you know that love is the magnet that holds people together, families together, partner relationships together, and so on. It's a magnet, truly a magnetic energy.
I think even scientists would agree that at the basis of everything is energy. They might not agree at the moment that it's the energy of love, but nevertheless, that forms the very basis of all life. And so it's not such a big step, I think, from science to spirituality in that respect. At least I think one day they'll see eye to eye, even if at the moment they seem to be very different perspectives.
Well, you know, I remember in the 80s, a book came out called The Dancing Wooly Masters. Wooly, W-U-L-I, which is some type of Buddhist term, which I don't remember what it means. But this book was a description of quantum physics in terms that we, the laymen, could understand. And it related that level of physics, which talks about the very small, nano level, when we talk about atoms and really smaller particles than atoms, subatomic particles, and talked about all of this understanding that was growing at that time in terms of Zen Buddhism and the spiritual teachings from around the world. So there is really a growing awareness that what we're discovering in physics corresponds with the teachings of these great traditions.
Yeah, I think actually science and spirituality have been artificially separated, because really you need morals, ethics, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, behind science and technology. And at the moment, we don't have that. So we have a lot of unethical things going on that wouldn't happen if we had that spiritual understanding and understood these sort of concepts, like love being the basis of all life.
And so we go on to talk about this very, very basic teaching that our nature is love itself. And that we know this from the New Testament. This is what Jesus was teaching in Palestine 2,000 years ago. And this is something so incredible if you contemplate it, to believe that, to actually think it's true, has such an impact on how you would experience yourself and others. And then the next part of it is that we are essentially God, the whatever you want to say about what God is in terms of a source or a divine intelligence, a creative intelligence, and that God and love are one. Now, again, this is very similar to the Christian teaching, and I think you'll find it's present in all of the great traditions. And it's also something that more and more, for example, in the human potential movements or self-help, human development, this is more and more being affirmed and understood to be a powerful motivator and a powerful factor in how people can shift out of destructive ways of being towards themselves and towards others.
I think when it comes to religion, it was Jesus 2,000 years ago who introduced to humanity this whole concept of love, because I don't think before that we really understood what it is, and he demonstrated it in the way he lived his life. But 2,000 years later, we're still not really putting it into action, are we?
Yeah, it's a real struggle. It really is. Yeah. And this comes from one of Maitreya's messages. We will talk more about Maitreya a bit later in the program and explain who he is. And to go ahead now.
Just for the moment, Maitreya is a senior member of our spiritual kingdom. And he's been releasing teachings through a couple of reporters internationally. And Benjamin Krem knows about that. And so we are aware of it as well. And we will be talking about Maitreya and some of his ideas as we go on. But one of them is that we have forgotten who we are. We've forgotten that we're divine. We've forgotten that we are love. We have forgotten that we're souls having a physical life, that we're not humans having a spiritual experience, we're spirits having a human experience. We've forgotten that. So we've stopped acting like that as much as we possibly could if we were focused on it.
That's true. We've really lost our way in many ways, and there's a great gap between what we would wish the world was like, what it really is, and a lot of that is simply because of this very fact, and it applies to how we treat each other, how we treat all the other kingdoms in nature, all the other forms of life. And according to the Ageless Wisdom teaching, not only we are divine, but all life is divine, that there is nothing else than that. And so it's really, it would require a total shift in how we behave and how we structure our world to really live according to this. So it is a major change that's required.
I think you're right about how we've forgotten who we are, because if you look back at all the ancient civilizations and cultures, most of them lived in harmony with nature and harmony with each other. But because of the society we have nowadays, we seem to have lost touch with that inner spirituality. I think because we've been so focused on science and technology, we've disconnected from that very essential part of who we are.
Well, and perhaps the ways in which people were in harmony with nature previously was, I would want to say perhaps something like it was something that people inherited. That is, that they hadn't had to parse it out themselves intellectually. It was simply, this is how we've always done things. So it was instinctive, maybe. And it may have come from a time in which there was a real understanding. But if you look back over the last 2,000 years, I think that we're now starting to understand the world around us in ways that we haven't previously, that lead to being able to live in harmony. I'm not saying we couldn't live in harmony without understanding the world, but I think that it's also a new turn on the spiral in terms of our evolution and understanding of ourselves and the world, that we can begin to relate to the other forms of life in a way that we've never been able to before, precisely because of science.
Children haven't been brought up thinking of themselves as love or thinking of themselves as spiritual beings. And that's one of the things that will change as we understand it. Our information says that the educational system will start treating us like souls and educating us as souls in human bodies. And that will change the point of view of the children, and it will stick with them through their lives. So that's one of the good things that we can look forward to in the future, I think.
I think you're right.
I think what you're saying, Sabina, is right. It's like we're moving into a higher turn of the spiral, really, isn't it? Like we're adding on to our previous understanding of who we are, the knowledge of science and what that has added to our lives. It's just a matter of making that work in such a way that it enriches people's lives, rather than at the moment where we have, huge disparity between how people are living. So eventually I think it will work in harmony and we will have a much more whole and balanced society. So well, it doesn't have to be separative, in other words, science.
No, I don't think so, not at all. Excuse me. In terms of talking about love, for example, if you read about the type of understanding that scientists now have of how ecosystems work, how different species make the ecosystem around them a fertile or good place for other species, that all of them are necessary and they all play a role. This is something I don't think we ever understood before. We may have observed that, okay, there are these different types of animals in this area, but we didn't actually understand what each one was contributing to a larger kind of world around them. And now we have that understanding, and it keeps growing as more and more is discovered or understood, and down to the molecular level of how all of this fits together.
Let's reveal the stages of love.
All right.
I want to see this.
Okay. So do you want to talk about the first one, Dick?
Well, love of self. If we know we are love, then we can love ourselves. Yes, we're human and we make mistakes, but love of self is critical, because if you don't recognize the love in you, you can't give it to others. You have nothing to give. And so love of self, it all starts there. It all starts there because we realize we have this huge well, this huge resource of love that we can give out to the world.
Yeah, I think we start off thinking we're the center of the universe, don't we? In fact, most of us are still at that point. But you've got to move beyond that. As you evolve, you realize that other people around you are just as important and just as valuable as you are. And so you start your journey outwards and looking more and more at helping other people rather than just yourself.
So would you say that this love of self means that it's a way as though we were, each of us was two people, one who's the one doing the loving and one who's the one receiving the loving? I mean, because it almost sounds like that when we talk about love of self.
Well, yes, it's about observing and knowing yourself. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's fascinating right there. It's just that. So the next one, love of partner or romantic love. And now I would have to qualify this and say not everybody may experience this in a lifetime, or not everybody may want to experience it for that matter. But that wouldn't mean that a person wasn't experiencing love or capable of it. This is just, we're calling this stages of love, but I think it's simply, in a way, like the way you started talking about it, Dick, that it's an Megan, sorry, an expansion outward, right, from the self.
Mm.
To others.
Absolutely. And romantic love, I think most people are familiar with. Even if they don't have a partner, they've been in love, at some point. I mean, I first fell in love in 6th grade, so I learned about romantic love early. And and romantic love is a real love, but it's not
Absolutely.
all there is to say about love.
Right.
Apparently it's a fairly recent development, like only the last maybe couple of 100 years, or perhaps more than that, but it's not something that we've always had in humanity's evolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then love of family, well, of course, most of us, I'm sure, love our family and care for them and want the best for them. And that's probably where most people are at, to be fair.
So now you can see how the love is starting to expand outward. Let's do the next one.
Okay.
See, now here it expands again.
The wider group, beyond the family. And that could, you could even consider it love of country, some like a larger unit in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it could be, we've put the word country there, but it could be something like, I'm Scottish, I love all Scots people, or I'm a woman, I love all women, or it's some kind of grouping. So it doesn't have to be nation
Doesn't have to be
state.
country, right?
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm a musician, I love all musicians, that type of thing.
Mm.
And now this one, well, I think this is a reach for most of us.
Yes, I agree. Love of all creation. It's something we can aspire to.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there yet, most of us. Some of the gurus that live on the planet right now are, but I think most of us are working towards that. I mean, different people love different parts. Some people have a special love for all the animals in the world, and all the trees in the world, in the oceans of the world and the creatures in the ocean. So I think we're slowly expanding to this, but it's a good thing to aspire to.
Hmm. You might have the odd individual who has that sense of a love for all creation during a meditation, for example. So you might just have a very short instance of that sense of oneness. But yes, vast majority of people would not have that feeling or even understand what that would be like.
Well, that's true. And I have to say that I've always found it very challenging, the idea of feeling love towards certain species like cockroaches, for example.
Yeah. Well, love isn't this love, the love of all creation, I don't think is an emotional love.
No,
I think it's a heartfelt love. It's a soul love. It's a higher level love than just emotion. Call it mental and spiritual if you want, but it's an awareness that all creation is sacred.
Right.
And I think it's that kind of love. It's an unemotional love. Right.
It's a love where you seek to value the life of that form.
Yes.
As an expression of the same thing you are, basically.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are used to love where you're very attached to someone. And so if that person goes, then you feel bereft, understandably. But as the spiritual teachers love, it's very detached. it's kind of hard to explain, I suppose, because we're not so used to that. But it's unconditional, of course. So no matter what we do, no matter what crimes we commit, no matter what we think or say, these teachers, these masters of wisdom still love us. They love us throughout, whatever we get up to.
Yeah, unconditional love is the love of the spiritual kingdom. And Jesus demonstrated it in his lifetime as unconditional love to give us something to, again, to give us an example to aspire to. We're not there yet because we all need to continue evolving. And as we do, our ability to love and our awareness of love will expand. And ultimately, when we become members of the spiritual kingdom permanently, we will be aware of unconditional love and able to do it. But right now, we're doing the best we can, you know.
Yeah. It shouldn't be too hard on ourselves.
That's right. That's a good
We're all
point,
got things to
Megan.
work on, and we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, our purpose in doing this isn't to make anybody feel bad or inadequate or anything. It's just to kind of show where we're headed if we continue to expand and evolve. And
I think it helps very much. I know it helps me to know that this is not our only life, that we have many, many lifetimes. So if you don't get it right this time, there's always next time.
Yeah, that's very comforting. And I wanted to just describe an image that popped into my head when both of you were talking. Dick, earlier you held up a light bulb. You were showing how that helped your lighting for the camera. And I was thinking, well, unconditional love is similar to that in that the light bulb, once you turn it on, it emits light whether or not someone's there to be having the light shone on them. The light just continues to radiate forth. And I think that's probably the unconditional love image that works best for me, because the love is radiating out of you, whether or not there's a recipient or any particular recipient there, or what they
and
do
whether or not
do.
somebody loves us. You know,
Right.
the creation doesn't have to love us in order for us to love it. We don't need to. So unconditional love is giving love even though you're not getting it back, kind of thing. That's part of it too, I think. I think that's a good point, Sabina.
Yeah. And now we want to talk about degrees of love, words that help us to understand that love can be operating or functioning in many levels or degrees.
I love this part.
Yeah, so tolerance. And
Tolerance.
that would simply be that it's like live and let live. And that actually is a level of love in the sense that you're exercising forbearance, or you're exercising the capacity to allow another to be whatever they are being or do whatever they're doing.
Yes, another good word for tolerance is acceptance.
Right.
You don't have to agree with it, but you accept it. You tolerate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the lowest forms of love. Yeah.
And then kind of a corollary of that, but maybe a slightly expanded level would be harmlessness, in which you seek not to harm others.
I think that's a very difficult one for all of us to do, because we can unintentionally harm other people by something we say in a very clumsy manner, or even with the best of intentions, we can still inadvertently cause harm. But I guess at least if you have the intention of harmlessness, you're working towards that goal, then that's the main thing.
Yeah. I think Turn the Other Cheek was a teaching about harmlessness. I don't think they literally meant, let people beat you up or anything, but I think it was about trying to be as harmless as you can. If you can't be kind to somebody, at least don't hurt them. Right. That kind of thing. I mean, just imagine if everybody in the world was harmless, just harmless, forget the rest of love, just harmless. Man, it'd be a transformed world, wouldn't it?
My goodness.
So harmlessness is a very powerful, powerful goal to work towards, and each of us can work towards that. Yeah. Being less harmful.
Well, and this leads me to think about our systems, because right now we're thinking of love in terms of individual action.
Yes.
But we also are going to head towards, in this presentation, talking about our society's systems of how society operates politically, economically, socially, and that really all of those systems also either are or are not, or to different degrees are expressing love or allowing the expression
We're
of
not
love.
expressing love.
Yeah, no, not exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, cooperation would be another level, another degree of love.
Yes.
Where, yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I think we, even despite ourselves, we have to cooperate. For example, if you're driving a car, you know, you have to give way to someone else, you have to stop at the lights, you have to do all these cooperative actions in our everyday activities that we don't give a second thought to. And so I think we are learning, if not always, to be cooperative. But again, it's something that's probably worth being conscious of, especially in these times. We're moving into a time where it's more important than ever that we work together rather than against each other. We can see what happens if you have one strong individual sort of holding sway, what damage that can cause. It's much more effective in any sphere of life if we have a whole group of people working together to solve problems.
And this is where we step from just talking about ourselves to talking about the group, to talking about others. Competition is the opposite of cooperation. And competition can create some very nasty results and feelings and so on. Whereas cooperation, now we're getting outside of ourselves and we're talking about more than one person working together, even as we tolerate them. So yes, cooperation is a huge step.
You were trying to look at the bigger picture, like
Very
the effects
much
of our actions.
Yeah, I agree.
And that leads to the next one that we've got on our list, goodwill, which, for example, what your example, Megan, about driving, when you're driving, you don't necessarily have to be consciously feeling goodwill towards the other drivers. You could just be at the level of tolerance, but you're certainly exercising, excuse me, harmlessness. That's what you're trying to do. You don't want anyone to be hurt. You want everyone to be able to reach their destination. But goodwill would almost require another level of love, because here you're actually seeking good for others. You have the energy of love that's wanting to promote or create or assure or set up or protect the good for others.
It's becoming an active energy, isn't it, rather than just passive?
Yes, it is. You're wishing for the good. Your will is that others have good in their life, and then you act appropriately to that. So goodwill, I mean, Christians sing about goodwill to men every Christmas, but we don't think about what we're singing. We're talking about the will for good to everyone. And that's goodwill. It's a very powerful force on the planet, and we can each contribute to that by wishing well for others. Absolutely.
I would say that's probably one of the basic ideas behind religion, isn't it? That you wish goodwill for your fellow man, in whatever way you explain that or describe that. But it's a basic spiritual impulse that you want to care for each other, because actually doing that is good for you too. It works both ways.
Yeah. Religion is not only about a relationship to God, but a relationship with others in your church, in your synagogue, in your temple. That congregational kind of feeling, that's what religion is about. It takes it from a one-on-one to a part of a group as well. So I couldn't agree more, Megan. Good point.
And then when we talk about the group or the other, compassion as another stage or degree of love, and this would be you want good for others, and in addition, you're able to have compassion for suffering or difficulty that the other is experiencing or going through. And so it's actually a way of walking in the footsteps of the other, empathizing, envisioning, or imagining what it is to be that person, to live that life, to have that experience.
And we're going to talk later about this, but compassion is not just feeling good, feeling sorry for those who are less off, but doing something about it. Love is active. It's not passive. And we're going to talk more about that in a little while.
And then we have these words, brotherhood, sisterhood. Again, it's an idea of group, of feeling connected to others, and on a larger scale, much larger. In the past, people only used the word brotherhood. Now we also talk about sisterhood. But the idea being a shared sense of reality, or I don't know what to call it exactly, but it's definitely about a shared sense. Sorry, yeah, Megan.
Yeah. We will, I think in this coming age, we will know as a fact that we are one humanity, in more ways than one, not just because we're all on the same planet, but we all impact each other. We are, I always like to use this analogy, like that we're cells in the one body. And so if there's disease in one part, that affects another part of the body. So it's very important that we care for each other for the health of the overall body or of the world.
And you can see how these are building blocks. I mean, tolerance contributes to sisterhood. Harmlessness contributes to sisterhood. Cooperation contributes to sisterhood. Goodwill contributes to the feeling of and the awareness of sisterhood. And compassion creates an awareness of brotherhood and sisterhood of all people on the planet. So these degrees of love build upon each other and are some specific thoughts that we wanted to plant for you to consider about expanding our definition of love.
Then the last one on this list, reactive versus unconditional love. This is simply to talk about or introduce what we were mentioning earlier, unconditional love, the idea that you are emanating love regardless of how the other has behaved or is behaving or who the other is. And the word reactive here simply means the kind of love which reacts or is only expressed based on what others are doing. So it's a reaction, really, like, well, I love him when he does that, but not when he does this.
Very well said.
Yeah. That's
Whereas unconditional love is just out there.
Yeah.
For anyone who wants to take it, it's out there for the universe. You know, our thoughts are energy too, and they affect the universe around us. So unconditional love doesn't have to mean you have a conversation with a tree or a rabbit. You know, you just have unconditional love and they absorb it. It's that's how powerful love is as an energy.
I think to have unconditional love, you have to have this innate understanding that we're all divine, that we're all God at heart, because otherwise we just react to this personality and what they're saying or doing. So you need to get us understand the underlying divinity.
Yeah. Well, and now we're going to move into talking about the changes taking place. Oh no, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Yeah, sorry. We're still talking about love right now, and the fact that it's active and it transforms. It causes change, and I think we've all experienced that, right? The effect of love. We've been the recipients of love. We've seen how it affects and changes our very being and how we live.
Yeah. On a personal level, you can't be in a loving relationship very long unless you're willing to transform and change and adapt for the sake of that relationship. So love encourages you to transform yourself into a relationship that works. So I think a lot of us have experienced this active force of love and its transforming energy. Yeah.
I think even a very simple way, like if you're passing someone on the street and you smile at them, although it's difficult at the moment with our masks, I know, but just a simple smile can activate that sort of sense of love from the other person. It's amazingly how simple it is to get that response if you try.
I've seen that happen many times. Smile at someone and all of a sudden they wake up and they realize that I'm there and they smile back, and man, you can feel the connection. You can feel the energy. It's great.
That's true. Yeah. And these are quotations. This is from Benjamin Crump, whom we saw at the very beginning of the program, in a book called Maitreya's Mission, Volume 3. And these are very powerful words because they do describe the fact that love is an active force, and that if it's not active, it isn't actually love.
Yeah, I think that's probably an issue we all have, is that we've probably been brought up with all these wonderful spiritual ideals, but we haven't really necessarily understood that they're meant to be part of our life and that we act on those ideals. So they're just the things that sit up there in the ethers, instead of being very much part of how we live our lives.
Love is much more than an idea or a thought. If it's real love, it will translate into action that's appropriate to love. Yep.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. And so there are many, many ways to express love, to put it into action. And essentially, it's all about what you do, service to others, harmlessness, cooperation, sharing, all of the work that people are doing for social justice these days. That's love. That's love in action.
Absolutely. Service is love in action. Serving others is how we serve God.
I think even a politician can demonstrate love. I mean,
even a politician.
Hard on politicians, but in every sphere of life, you can demonstrate love in whatever you're doing. So whether that's politics, economics,
yes, and we certainly need more of that.
Yeah.
And I've just seen we have a question. I'll just read it out. You mentioned religion and groups, but religions separate themselves from those that they think oppose their beliefs. How do we transcend religious separatism?
Yeah. Well, it starts with you. You try not to hold religious separatism in your reality in life. All the religions, my understanding from the Ageless Wisdom, is that all the religions contributed to our information and our knowledge and our awareness of the spiritual universe in one way or another. They all do it, but you're right. The person who asked that question is absolutely right. Every religion is convinced they're the right way. They're the one and only. And that's the separation that's really coming out in our world right now and in our society. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because we're going to talk about the Sword of Cleavage separating people and why that's going to help us and how it's going to help us. But I think it just starts individually by each person trying to reduce their prejudice against certain religions. And that's where it's got to start. And I think it starts also with justice in the world, social justice, religious justice, political justice, economic justice. I mean, it's all part of that lack of reducing that separation and starting to care for others harmlessly and cooperatively.
I think the thing is, if you go back to the original teacher that inspired the religion, they would not preach separativeness or exclusiveness. So it's something that's developed, unfortunately, with most religions, is that they have ended up being at loggerheads instead of recognizing that most of what they talk about is actually in common. The differences are in the minority. And I think in the coming age, religions will be reformed to an extent where they go back to being more inclusive.
May I add one more thing to the answer to that question? How do we go forward from here and reduce that? The good news is we have help.
Yeah.
We have help because some of the members of the spiritual kingdom are walking amongst us now and will become openly available to make suggestions. And we're going to talk more about that as we go along. But the good news is we don't have to do it all ourselves. We are going to have help. And that's really the heart of our message about love and love in action.
Well,
yes, we're not without help.
Yeah, another thing to just keep in mind too is that in terms of this religious separatism, if you think of if people within religions could see those in the other groups or other religions as having the same right they have to make choices and to choose their beliefs, and to practice those beliefs, then that at a very basic level also could reduce this sense of separation, because you'd realize, well, that other person's like myself. They also have the same right I have. We all have these rights. But that goes back to what you were saying, Dick, about justice. And so I just realized I forgot to delete that. So I'm going to go to this one here. And this is what you were starting to mention, Dick, about the help that we have. We're seeing these changes taking place in the world, and that this is a new dawn is something that these great beings, the masters of wisdom, they see it that way. And I think many of us do too. We're seeing a gradual transformation of society and its structures. People are addressing issues that are systemic and that have been in place for a long time. But now, for the first time, people are saying this cannot stay in this way. It has to change. And I think that's the big change that we're seeing. People are no longer accepting that these structures or these systems which deny justice or brotherhood, that's not acceptable. And people are working to change this.
I think it's good to emphasize that it will be a gradual change. I know a lot of people fear change, and of course we've had a lot happen in the last couple of years, for example. But when it comes to the transformation of society, it will be something that happens with agreement from all sides, and it will be step by step. And eventually we will have a much better world for everyone, but it'll be something that we're all participating in. You're not going to be left behind.
Or forced against, these changes are going to happen. You're not going to be forced to make changes. The changes will happen because we all see that they make sense, and we think that we should make those changes. And some of them are happening now. If you sit back, if our audience sits back and looks at the world, they'll see that great changes are even happening now. And change causes stress, and change causes tension. And this is evident in our world right now, but it's a sign that good stuff is on the way, because change is taking place.
And why is all this change taking place? So this is also one of the things that we often refer to, and that is the change of age that we're going through right now, from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. We've all heard of these names, Pisces and Aquarius, but what they actually are astronomical facts. That is, it refers to the motion in the heavens of our solar system that makes a great circle through space that takes an incredibly long time. I think it's 25,000 years, something like that. And every age that we describe like this, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, refers to a period of time in which our solar system is in alignment with a constellation. So
Right.
we've been in alignment with the constellation of Pisces for the last 2,000 years, and we've been moving away from that alignment for the last 500 years or so, or 400. And now we've been, and simultaneously entering or coming closer and closer into alignment with the constellation of Aquarius. And each of these constellations, they're not inert. That is, just as we were talking earlier about how love is actually holding together the very atoms in cosmos, all the stars that radiate light are also, this light that they're radiating that we can perceive is also energy that has qualities which impact us. And so the stars in the constellation of Pisces, the energies that we were receiving stimulated our individuality, our idealism and devotion to an ideal. And now in Aquarius, these are different energies that we're receiving. It's a different constellation. And these energies are stimulating synthesis, the coming together of disparate parts to bring unity. And also the quality of making things real on the physical plane. And that's something that we're seeing in the changes around us, is this desire for things to be concrete and real, not just an ideal.
These energies are very powerful. And you're right. This is not the astrology that's in the newspapers for entertainment. This is real astronomy, and astronomers call it the precession of the equinox. That's what they call the change of the ages. And so we've been in alignment the last 2,000 years with the great constellation Pisces, and we've been receiving tremendous energies from this constellation. And one of them is idealism. And it's the idealism, the ideal of freedom that saved the world in World War II. So the Piscean work has done its energy, has done its work. It's done its job. The man has stepped out of the herd now. We're individuals. Men and women around the world are individuals now. And now, starting in 1625, we started moving out of the influence of Pisces. And in 1675, we started moving into the influence of the new energies of Aquarius. Here's the problem. All the institutions that we have been built with Piscean energy: education, finance, government and politics, science, you name it. Every aspect of life was built, the structures were built with Piscean energy, and Piscean energy is being withdrawn now. So those structures are collapsing. No matter how much money we throw at education, we can't fix it. No matter how much money we throw at healthcare, we can't fix it, and so on. Well, the new energies of Aquarius, which include cooperation, working together. The strong individual is no longer going to make that much difference in the world. They don't know it yet, but they're not. It's going to be groups. Maitreya said it's the everyday people of the world that are going to determine how the world is from now on. And so we're right in the middle of that transition. And when you're in the middle of the transition, you have chaos. And that's exactly what we have on the planet now. But I'm convinced that we have been put here in life, on the planet now, because we can handle it and we can make the changes that need to be changes. We need to recreate those structures with the energies of cooperation and synthesis, and then they'll work for the next 2,000 years and support a good life for humanity on the planet. And that's what we're going through now. We're going through this change, and the Aquarian energy is supporting people that work together. People marching in the streets are having a huge impact because Aquarian energy is supporting it. So this is a big time of change. It's a very important time.
Well,
And interestingly, sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Megan.
Interestingly, apparently the new energies of Aquarius can only work through groups. So it actually disencourages one individual from holding sway and encourages groups to take action. And yes, it's wonderful to see all the protests, especially from the young people. I think really they are our future, of course, in many more ways than one, but they seem to tap in more readily to all these new energies and recognize innately our synthesis, that we are one. Whereas, for the older generation, it's not how we were brought up. So it's more difficult, generally speaking, for us to tap into that whole new energy and idea.
The older generations resist change, like you said, whereas the young people, they see the need for change. They're ready to go. And they are going to help us transform the life on this planet. Absolutely.
Well, and even in the media, I just read an article that I thought very interesting, because it described how the contrast now in politics is between the quote unquote experts, or people who have these very expensive educations and have gone to elite universities, versus the common sense of the regular person. And what the commenter or the writer of the article was saying is that what we're seeing more and more now is that it's the common sense of the person on the street which is the wiser of these two.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's
Yeah,
exactly what Maitreya said would happen. And it's happening. Yeah, this is a great time to be alive, you guys. We're going to see changes we never dreamed of. Here we go, the age of Aquarius. So
So the
over the last
knowledge.
2,000 years, humanity, we've been expressing the knowledge aspect of God.
Mm.
See, this all happens in stages. That's why science has expanded so much in the last century. I mean, we've gone from horse-drawn carriages to man walking on the moon in the blink of an eye. And science has developed so much over the last 50, 100 years. And that's the knowledge aspect of God that's been sent to us by the spiritual kingdom. And now we will express higher aspects of love. Here we go.
Yeah, this is the greater challenge now. Right.
The brotherhood of humanity, the brotherhood and sisterhood, that's the higher aspect that we're going to demonstrate now by working together and caring for each other more.
Yes, it's hard to comprehend what the future will be like when we look at the present, but it'll be a golden civilization from what we've read anyway and understand. And I can well believe it. Once we put into action these wonderful ideals, there's no reason why we can't have like a garden of Eden on earth, just a beautiful paradise in which we can live.
But it will happen slowly, as you said.
It'll take a while, not overnight.
Yeah. The Ageless Wisdom says that one of God's great laws is the law of balance, the law of equilibrium. And it says that however bad it's been, that's how good it's going to get. So that gives you an idea. I mean, these are rough times for humanity. Thank goodness we're up to it. It can survive it and prosper during it. But that horrible life that we've been seeing for the last 20 years or 50 years with all the world wars and so on, the last century, that's going to come out of the other end with really wonderful times that Megan was talking about, where we will be filled with joy and able to express our joy and our love to each other. We'll take better care of each other, and the major structures of the world will adapt. We will adapt them. See, nobody can wave a magic wand and make this happen. We have to do the work.
That's the thing, isn't it?
But we will do it. That's the good news.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are rather passive and they expect some great teacher to wave their magic wand or whatever you want to call it and solve everything for us. But we don't seem to realize it's our responsibility. It's like a teenager with a messy room. You have to clean it up. You can't expect someone else to do it for you. And for example, with the environment, what a mess we've made of the environment. We need to take action en masse to heal Mother Earth.
And the reason we do is because of the other great law of God, which is the law of action and reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's also called the law of cause and effect. In the East, they call it the law of karma. Same thing. We created the mess. We have to clean it up. It's our responsibility to do that. I don't mean that you in the audience actually made the mess of the world. I mean that humanity did, and humanity needs to clean it up. So we have to do it. We have to do the work.
It's a collective.
And that's how we learn and grow as well. If we were just passive and everything was done for us, how would we evolve? So we have to go through this experience ourselves.
And so here we have another quote from Benjamin Krem's master about how to do this, in fact. And it's true. We have to have new skills, new ways of thinking. Everything has to be adapted to what the needs of the moment are, what we actually are facing. And these new energies of Aquarius give us this possibility. Because in fact, as you were saying earlier, Megan, you cannot avail yourselves of these energies unless you do it in groups. So it's a completely different way of functioning. And in fact, the three of us, when we were putting together this program, we realized that when we were working in time together, that's when all the ideas flowed. When we tried to do it on our own, well, it wasn't that great.
Right.
And there's that word brainstorming. Well, it's a very powerful force.
Yeah, whatever you're doing is potentized manyfold. And of course, that's behind the meditation we'll be doing later as well. The more people, the more energy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about how the need for sharing is very fundamental in talking about groups and working together. And when you share, you express love. That's actually what you do. It's an expression of love. And we all know this on a very, very basic level. For example, in our families, we want to share what we have with each other. Parents want to share what they have with their children. It's a natural outflow of the love within a family. And it's something that we're learning to do on a wider scale, as we've been talking about in society. We've been understanding that we need to do it on a wider scale, that everybody's part of this family called humanity. And we cannot survive if we don't share.
We're talking about sharing on a worldwide basis. We're not talking about forcing somebody to give up their life savings to give it away to others. That's not at all what we're talking about. Ageless Wisdom talks about how countries need to share their overproduction. Instead of seeking the greatest profit they can get, help out the countries that need it, and then get back from them the production that we need, the overproduction from them that we need. So there will be a huge inventory taken of the needs and the production of each country eventually, probably done by an arm of the United Nations. So that's the kind of sharing we're talking about. You know, when a family of 4 only has enough food for 3, they don't decide which person they're going to starve. They find a way to share that food so that nobody starves. Well, that's what the nations of the world need to start doing and will start doing. That's the sharing we're talking about. And it's a huge dynamic expression of love. And when that happens, it creates trust. Countries start to trust each other.
That needs to happen right now, of course, with the vaccines.
Yes.
If only the wealthier countries were to share the vaccines or the technology, the knowledge how to create them themselves with the poorer countries, so everyone has access to this very needed thing right now. And you can see what happens when you don't share. You have these new variants of the virus, in this case, popping up in the countries where they've got a very low vaccination rate. And therefore, you can see it's to everyone's benefit if you share. If you make sure everyone has equal access, then you can solve problems.
Yeah, that's right. And
yes,
John,
and it creates trust.
Our chat show host, he just put a quote in the chat from Benjamin Creme. Mankind will soon see that there is no alternative to sharing the produce of the world. Every other method has been tried and failed, and has led inevitably to war, suffering, degradation, and misery. Isn't that the truth?
So let's put up the last line and we'll show them. That
Right.
trust will lead to peace.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Sabina was just saying. Sharing will create peace. How? Because it establishes trust. And that trust is an expression of love. Sharing is an expression of love. Trust is an expression of love. And it will lead to peace. When countries trust each other, they have no reason to attack each other. And that's an expression of love.
And it makes sense that you have no reason to attack if everybody has enough and everybody has the same amount. But it's not just a mathematical equation. It really is about love, which is a lived experience. Yeah. And so we want to describe who these masters of wisdom are that we've been talking about. Who are they? They are members of what we call the spiritual hierarchy, which is simply a group of people like ourselves who are further along on the path of evolution of their consciousness. We are all evolving all the time, moment by moment, lifetime after lifetime. We're growing in our consciousness, in our understanding, our awareness. And this is a process that is infinite. It doesn't end. So the masters of wisdom, although they may be light years ahead of where we are, they're also evolving constantly. So all life is in constant evolution. Nothing stands still. And we also talked about the fact that they have completed their evolutionary journey on Earth. So they're still evolving, their consciousness is still evolving, but they no longer need to be incarnated, be born in the way that we are in order to grow. We need to do that in order to grow. But they've reached a stage in which they continue growing without going through the process of birth and death and rebirth and death.
They did it ahead of us for a long time. Yes. And then they finally learned all the lessons that planet Earth has to teach. And by the time you've been reincarnated thousands of lifetimes and learned all the lessons the planet can teach, you don't need to come back in a physical body anymore. You become a permanent member of the spiritual kingdom. And that's what these masters of wisdom are. They're senior members of our spiritual kingdom. They're the oldest members of our spiritual kingdom. They're perfected human beings. They're perfected men and women, and they've completed their evolutionary journey on Earth and don't need to come back anymore. And thank goodness they have been the inspiration for humanity. Behind the scenes, they've been inspiring us and giving us ideas. And all the great people of our history on this planet got their great ideas, the musicians, the artists, from the teachers, all from the masters of wisdom. So they have been standing behind us, inspiring us, and helping us, even though we didn't know anything about them. They've been doing it.
Well, and I remember there was a Far Side cartoon back in the 80s where it showed somebody with a magnifying glass focusing the sun's light onto something. And I don't recall what the punchline was, but basically what it was describing was something that is a fact of life, which is that all life is emanating energy and receiving energy. And so when you, Dick, talk about this process, for example, in great artists, inventors, scientists, receiving inspiration through the masters of wisdom, it doesn't mean that we're not receiving the inspiration from the vast divine source that we call God, or that we might call God, but rather that this energy is being transmitted through intermediaries, that is directly, but also through intermediaries, so that it's almost like layers of energy coming down. Say somebody who has a greater capacity to absorb energy can take in more, but then they can step it down or transmit it at maybe a lower vibration, so it's not as difficult for a smaller consciousness to absorb. So it's a stepwise thing.
Yes, and you might know some of these masters of wisdom as Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, Confucius, Muhammad. Joan of Arc is one of the great masters now. St. John is one of the great masters now, and so on. These are the great, great people that have gone ahead of us in evolution and are helping us out behind the scenes now. But you've heard of many of them.
Of course, from what we understand, it won't be behind the scenes. In the coming age, we'll have a whole group of these wonderful spiritual teachers living side by side amongst us in the major cities worldwide, which is the help I was talking about in itself.
Yeah, which is the help I was talking about earlier. Yeah, absolutely, Megan. This is a big time for humanity.
And
we are really blessed to be alive right now, even though it doesn't look like it sometimes.
No, that's true. For many of us, it doesn't. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the masters of wisdom is Maitreya. That's his personal name. And we've mentioned him before. We've put quotes from him up on the screen as well. And like the masters, he embodies love, but he embodies it at an even greater level than the other masters. He's kind of like another level up, or two levels, because as we were saying, they keep evolving as well. So he embodies unconditional love at a planetary level, which is an amazing thing to contemplate. I don't think I can fully grasp what that actually means, but love is streaming from him to all of us and to all life on the earth, excuse me, all the time, constantly.
Apparently, when we feel love, we are sensing Maitreya because he embodies that love energy for the planet.
So that means
Yes,
we're connected to him.
Mm.
Maitreya in Sanskrit means the one who brings joy, the joyful one. And he comes for everybody, every age, every race, every sexual preference, every sex, religious and non-religious alike. He comes for everyone. He doesn't come to start a new religion. He comes as a teacher. He's going to teach us about living life.
I think it's good to know too with the masters and Maitreya that they are incredibly humble beings, because we've had examples in history of people that are very grandiose and build themselves up. In actual fact, the spiritual teachers, they are amazingly humble and they want to be seen as our brothers and at our side, not removed from humanity, which unfortunately is what we've done in the past through religion.
Yes, in the age of Pisces, with our focus on the individual, we've put people on pedestals and created a separation between ourselves and them. According to Benjamin Krem, Maitreya doesn't like to be considered one of these titles. He doesn't want to be talked about or thought about that way. He thinks of himself more as a teacher, but a teacher in a very broad sense. And so he doesn't think that he doesn't think to himself, oh, I'm the so-and-so or the so-and-so. And he prefers to be known simply as a teacher. And
he made his own body, and he entered the world July 7, 1977. He stayed behind the scenes until he finds exactly the right time to come forward to humanity, where he can have the greatest attention of humanity and the greatest effect. Coming forward, and then he will be with us. He's in a body that won't die and can't be killed and doesn't need to eat or sleep. He'll be with humanity, walking amongst us and making suggestions, not forcing anybody to do anything, for the whole age of Aquarius, the next 2,250 years. He's waiting for our media to give him an invitation by saying, who are you? Who are you really? And then he will have what he calls his day of declaration, where he will declare to the entire world on radio and worldwide television. And even if you're in your head, if you're working in the fields, he will declare who he is. And he'll talk about what the situation is right now and what we need to do to change things. He comes to inspire and to teach.
And yes, he wants to be known for his teachings, not his titles, not how he looks. And he has been appearing incognito on television interviews around the world over the past several years, but not giving his true name, appearing as an ordinary person, so that we respond naturally, organically to what he is saying and the energy behind what he says, which will be along the lines of what we've been talking about, the need to share the world's resources, that we are one, and so on.
And so this teaching that he has for us, essentially, it's to teach us how to love. But you can't teach someone how to love by telling them what to do. So it's through inspiration. It's through a transmission of energy. It's through the love. It's love itself, the love from him that comes through him. That is what will teach us, or that is what is teaching us, in fact. That energy is having a great effect on all of us. Now, earlier at the very beginning, we talked about how he also says that our very nature is love. So it seems like a conundrum to say, well, we are love, and yet we need to learn how to express it. And that's simply the conundrum, if you think of it that way, of our evolution of consciousness. Because on the level of the soul, we're already perfect. And yet here on this physical plane that we live in, we aren't able to express that perfection fully. And so it's a constant process of struggle or of working to express it more every day, as much as we can.
He is waking up our hearts.
Right. And we've talked about our systems earlier, our political, economic, social systems, and the fact that they in fact, they impede the expression of love. They get in the way. They're preventing us from having justice. They're preventing us from sharing. And so this is something very real and very nuts and bolts. And it also relates to love, because in order for this love to be expressed, we need to change these systems. And it's love itself which is helping us to do that work. And this is another quote from Benjamin Creme from a book called The Great Approach. So the work is underway. We're seeing it already taking place to change the conditions that people live in, the conditions which determine what their lives are like. And this love that's impelling those changes is also able to flow more freely and more fully as the changes take place. So it's a virtuous cycle, if you want to think of it that way.
Maitreya is known by two phrases. He's the world teacher for the age of Aquarius, and he's also the water carrier. That's why the background of this slide is water, is because he is the water carrier, and his presence was predicted by Jesus in the Christian New Testament when Jesus told his disciples to go into town and look for a man carrying a pot of water. Boom, that's Maitreya. They found the man carrying the pot of water and they rented the upper room, and the story goes on. But that little vignette right there, it was very symbolic of what's coming next. And Jesus knew that. He knew exactly what he was saying, is my understanding, is our understanding. And so he foretold the coming of the water carrier in that little vignette. It's beautiful. The masters don't miss a trick on how to keep us informed and inspired.
Yeah, that's right. And the teaching is always appropriate to the ability of the person to understand it. So it always takes a form that works.
We're never given more than we can handle.
And this is a list of his priorities for us. And these are also priorities for millions of people. This is what we want for each other. And these are all things that we need: food, water, housing, healthcare, education, and more we're aware, repair of the environment is essential as well. And these are also enshrined in the Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25.
The United Nations. Yeah. He says these are human rights. You shouldn't have to go without this. Everybody should have this available to them at some level. It may not be a mansion, but it's a place to live where you're warm and you're safe and you have a roof over your head. But everybody has a right to that. Everybody has a right to healthcare. Everybody has a right to education. The United Nations said this a long time ago. I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And we're just getting around to having now, finally, we didn't do it. So now Maitreya comes to teach this. Yeah. He comes to explain it and teach it and help us figure out how we can do it. But we have to do the work.
Even the wealthiest countries, I mean, where we respectively live, not everyone has access to housing or healthcare or education, let alone healthy food. It's probably beyond their budget in many cases. So we have a huge work to do, all of us together, to change the world. So everyone has their basic rights met. And it's for our benefit. If you want to be purely selfish about it, if everyone else has their basic rights met, that will mean there's no more terrorism, there's no more war, because that's usually the incentive for that sort of thing.
And if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this fits with that. Because if you don't have food and housing and healthcare and education and a safe world to live in, if you don't have that, how can you think about love? How can you think about anything spiritual? You can't. Our basic needs need to be satisfied first. Maitreya is totally aware of that. These are his basic first priorities. And the other thing that isn't on here is sharing. He says, share and save the world. And of course, he's talking about nation sharing. So, and you can share too. You can pick a charity that you want to support and either do volunteer work for them or send them money. But sharing will save the world. But it's got to start here.
Yeah, well, and this is how it's through sharing that we can bring about these,
on
make
all
these
levels.
priorities real.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's not just on a monetary or a material level, it's your technology, it's your insight, it's your ideas, it's on every sort of angle.
Yeah, sharing is about all of that. That's right.
Mm.
Sharing time, energy, ideas, all of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what we're seeing is that more and more the voice from the street is saying to the leaders, this is what you need to do. You need to make sure that everybody has food, water, housing, healthcare, education.
Mm.
So the pressure for sharing is coming, and
Yeah.
it's coming from the street.
Yes, in America, where I live in the United States, President Obama created what it got ended up calling Obamacare, but it was basically healthcare in the United States for millions more people than it had been available to before. And then our elected representatives decided, many of them, that they wanted to get rid of it. They didn't like it, probably because it wasn't their idea. But anyway, people marching in the streets with the support of the Aquarian energy and love and group energy saved healthcare in America, in the United States, by marching in the streets. That's the energy of Aquarius. That's the demonstration of humanity deciding how we should have our lives be. Powerful demonstration.
And so now this slide, we're near the end now. We're going to soon go to meditation. And I realize we've taken longer today than we usually do, but there was just so much to say. The Sword of Cleavage, this is something that Maitreya and the masters talk about, and refers to the energy of love, this very same love that we've been talking about all the time. Because what it does, it's impersonal. We've talked about that as well. And it has the effect of stimulating everybody, all of us. And so whatever your priorities are, or however you see the world, what you long for, whether it's peace and right relations, or whether what drives you is greed and competition, this energy of love will stimulate you and enhance and amplify those qualities in you, the feelings in you, your wanting to bring them about. And so this is why it's called the Sword of Cleavage, because what it does is it makes everybody more of what they already are, and in this way reveals the differences between us, and actually creates a much clearer vista in which we can see what the choices are.
It's like we're at a crossroads, really, isn't it? And we can either go this way we're going, the same way, or we can choose a different way. And we're at that critical point, and we really have to make the decision.
That's right.
The odds, the people are separating themselves based on their ideals right now in a way grander than ever before. And when that separation occurs, for example, in the United States, the Democrats and Republicans are the farthest apart they've ever been. The liberals and the conservatives, farthest apart they've ever been. It makes the choice very clear. There's no gray area. And that's what's happening all around the world, whether to get vaccinated or not. No gray area. It's you're either for it or you're against it. And it makes the choice much clearer. So this sort of cleavage that was predicted in the Christian Bible, Maitreya is using now, and it is the power of his love, which goes to everyone and enhances their thoughts, their ideals along those lines. And so the separation allows us to make very clear choices. And it clears up the whole question of which way to go, because the choices are very obvious. And that's the purpose of it, to help us decide.
I think it's been extremely important, because there was, if you think back 20 years, for example, earlier it was big tobacco, now it's big oil. But in terms of obfuscation and creating confusion so that people can't see the way to go, these large corporations have been extremely effective in doing that. But more and more, it's not working, and people see through it. And so it's exactly as you're saying, Dick, it's an extremely important kind of power of clearing the way, of making it obvious the road to take.
I think there's been a big distrust in governments worldwide over the past few decades because of the obfusc, a big word, because this is why they don't always tell the truth. That maybe that's putting it nicely. They have deceived people often in the past, and I guess it's understandable, therefore, that people are distrustful. But I think there are a lot of very good new politicians coming onto the scene who do have the interests of people at heart and who speak the truth. And so we need to vote those sorts of people in. That's our part of our people power, which is going to be the next big force in the world. You know, that's the people getting together and making their voices heard who will change the world.
Well said. Yeah. And I think now we'll just go to, this is our last slide about love. It's a quote from Maitreya. Love your brother, heed his need, give of your plenty, and restore joy to the world.
I love that quote.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is. And that's all the aspects of love that we talked about earlier that can allow this to happen. Compassion and sharing and cooperation and so on. This is about expressing that now, not just thinking it, holding it as an idea, but actually showing love in action he's encouraging us to do that right here.
I think we can all teach each other by example. If we demonstrate love in our lives, the way we treat each other, that has an impact on other people.
Totally.
Yeah, it does. That's right. We're all examples for each other.
So love makes the world go round. They weren't kidding. It really does. It holds creation together, and it holds us together, and it encourages us to work together.
Speaking of which.
Right. We're now at the end of this part, and I'll just put up, these are our links. John, I'm sure, has already put them in the chat. More information can be found here at share-international.org. You can watch videos of Benjamin Creme speaking about these topics and much, much more on the Share International channel on YouTube. And there are also books that you can download for free and buy and download at share-ecart.com, or just order them in physical form. And for free download, these 4 books are available. The Ageless Wisdom Teaching, The World Teacher for All Humanity, that's about Maitreya, Transmission, a meditation for the new age, which describes the meditation we're going to do, and The Awakening of Humanity, which is extremely timely right now.
Powerful reading, yes, and it's free. And other books by Benjamin Creme are available as well. He's got like 17 books that are available. We're not here to sell books, but we want to make you aware of these resources in case you want to study further and get more information. And these 4 are free.
And they're very easy to read. Benjamin Creme's got the knack of putting esoteric ideas or spiritual principles into a form where even the layman can perfectly understand what he's on about.
Yes.
That's right. It's a very sort of reader-friendly way of explaining everything. And there's also a magazine called Share International, which comes out 10 times a year. You can find out about that as well at the same place, share-ecart.com. You can read excerpts of it for free on the website we had up earlier, share-international.org. And it combines the teachings of the masters and Maitreya with current events and how these relate to each other in the way we've been doing today.
And it brings the latest updates on the masters and on Maitreya and his presence in the world. There's no advertising. Benjamin Creme created this monthly magazine, and there's no advertising because he didn't want to be obligated to any advertisers to have to change anything that he thought was the truth. And so these magazines, very high quality, glossy paper, but no advertising at all. It's strictly information about the ageless wisdom, about Maitreya and the masters. It has letters from readers with questions that Benjamin Creme had answered, which not all of which have gotten published yet. So now we're publishing them, even though Benjamin Creme is no longer with us. This is a wonderful magazine. You get 10 issues It's a very affordable. It's been priced so that everybody can afford it. I really highly recommend it.
Yes. And so now on to transmission meditation. Let's describe what this is and how to do it so that everybody can join in. It's very, very easy. Anyone over the age of 12 can do it. The only people who shouldn't do transmission are those who have pacemakers and those who are going through a period of instability emotionally or psychologically. And the only reason for these qualifications are that the energies that you experience when you do this meditation are powerful. And so they could contribute to further destabilization. If
They might
you're already in that.
overstimulate. That's right. Overstimulate. Yeah.
And the same with respect to the pacemaker.
Yeah, this energy is real. And one of the ways you'll feel it, you might feel a tickle in your throat. You might feel like you have a sweatband on, pressure around your head. You might feel like it's pushing your head down into your neck when you're meditating. Just try it and see if you feel any of those. But this energy is real.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful way to help the world. It's not like a form of service where you see the direct results of what you're doing. So it does rely on being in touch with your own intuition and in knowing that what you do is valuable. But you certainly feel, we get that sense during the meditation itself. It feels like a dynamic activity to me. I don't know if that's how you, Sabina, and
absolutely
you feel.
Very dynamic.
Yeah. And at the same time as helping the world, you are helping yourself. You do receive benefit from the meditation, especially if it's done on a regular basis, which goes to, with any meditation if it's done regularly, but particularly with transmission.
The biggest difference between, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say that part of it you can see right away, the effect on yourself. Yeah.
The biggest difference between transmission meditation and any other regular meditation is that in normal meditation, you're downloading energy from your soul. The Ageless Wisdom says you can picture your soul as a multi-pointed white light about 6 inches above the top of your head, connected to your mind and your heart by golden threads. And so in normal meditation, we're basically, if you're a computer person, downloading energy from our soul, spiritual energy, to stimulate our life. And during transmission meditation, it's different. During transmission meditation, we say something called the Great Invocation, which gets the attention of the masters of wisdom in the spiritual kingdom, and they send their energy, the energy of the universe, down through our chakras and then out into the world to step it down so it's easier for people to absorb. But you can't have all that energy going through your chakras without experiencing personal growth. So this is a combination of karma yoga and laya yoga, the yoga of service to the world and the yoga of the growth of the chakras.
And it's very much a group activity. The more people in the group, the more energy can be sent through the group. I mean, ideally you have at least 3 people because you're forming the basic triangle.
Right.
But the exponentially more energy can be sent through more people. I can't remember the figures, but 10 people can be hundreds of triangles, because between all the different participants. That's the scientific side of it, which we probably shouldn't go into right now.
It's actually based on permutations, how many different ways you can combine the different members of the group into triangles. So it is based on the science of triangles.
And the good news is it's very easy to do. All you have to do is focus at the ajna center between the eyebrows and hold that focus as long as you can. And when you drop focus, think home a couple times, bring the attention back up. That's it. Anybody can do it, unless you're the people Sabina mentioned, you have serious heart problems or whatever. You don't want to get overstimulated.
It does take a bit of discipline, I think, to be fair, especially if you want to stick with transmission meditation on a regular basis. But it's highly recommended. It's such a beneficial activity for the world and for yourself. It's worth trying at the very least.
Absolutely. We invite you to try it with us today. And I want to mention before we start that there are, because of the pandemic, and as you can see right now, the way we're doing this, we're using technology to connect across distances, great distances. Megan is in New Zealand, Dick is in California, I'm in Canada, and you may be wherever you are. I think some of you are in Europe, also in New Zealand, Australia. So what we're seeing is a way that we can connect across space using technology. And this is also being used for transmission meditation. Since it is a group meditation and you cannot do it by yourself, you do need to do it with others. But because of the pandemic and the problems with meeting with others in closed spaces, what we're finding is that we can use Zoom to create meditation groupings that are connected through technology, although each in their own home, maybe in their own country or their own continent. And so John has put in the chat links so that if you're interested, you can sign up and participate in these different Zoom meditation groups. There are Zoom meditation groups on different days of the week, so you can choose one that fits with your schedule. And it's a really great way to do this meditation with minimal effort, really. All you have to do is sit in a chair at home. It couldn't be any easier, really. And so just to get back to the nuts and bolts, Dick was talking about the ajna center, the point between the eyebrows. This is the spot where we focus our attention. And if you've never done it before, by putting your finger here and feeling what that feels like when your finger's touching yourself there, that's what you want to do when you're meditating. You want to feel this spot.
Not literally, though.
No, not with your finger, but with your attention, with your awareness. That's right. And Megan, do you want to describe how we actually do the meditation? What do we do?
We keep it very simple. So we start by sitting in chairs in a circle. If it's more than, say, 6 people, then the men and the women sit together. It's just from an energetic point of view, it's easier for the masters of wisdom who are overseeing the meditations if we do it that way. So we sit comfortably in chairs. We focus on the ajna center. Sometimes some groups will play, I should say, a message from Maitreya that was given through Benjamin Cream at the very beginning. But you can simply just say the great invocation together out loud as a group. And once you've said the great invocation, the meditation starts. So by saying it, you are invoking the attention and energies of the masters involved with the meditations.
And one of the instructions is that, as you've been saying, about bringing your attention back when it wanders to this spot, but to not be worried that you have thoughts or that your mind continues to sort of churn out thoughts while you're meditating. That's okay. Just let them be. They can happen, but maintain your focus here while those thoughts are coming up. And we also like to say that you don't have to believe in anything to do this meditation. That is, you don't have to believe in meditation or in energy or in anything that we've been talking about. We welcome you to try it, to experience it, because it's really in the experience that you'll discover what it is.
Your attention will drop. You'll notice that your eyes will be looking at the floor, or your head will come down. Whatever you notice that you're not holding your attention, because it's hard, to hold it there for a really long time. So when it drops down, then you think Om. You don't say it out loud because that's a very low vibration. You think it. Thoughts are a much higher vibration, and you think it like this: Om, Om, a couple times. And that will bring the attention, especially with practice, it'll bring your attention right back to the ajna center. And then you go on. And then when it drops, you do it again. And yeah, many people have received healing doing transmission meditation. I'm one of them. And these energies are real. And you're serving the world. It's a great way for busy people who don't have a lot of time to serve the world. You do it, try to work your way up to doing it for an hour, but you can start, what are we going to do? 30 minutes?
30 minutes, yeah.
We're going to start with a half hour just so you've got to get a feel for it and see if you experience anything. Now, the idea of meditation isn't to get great thoughts or inspiration. You might, but that's not the point. The point is to make contact with the spiritual energies by focusing at the ajna center and serving the world.
I think there's one thing we should mention is that we act as instruments through which the energy is sent, because I know in some meditations you are told to send the energy somewhere where it's needed around the world. We simply don't have the knowledge that the masters have. They are master scientists. They know exactly which energy being sent through the group is needed where. Right. And so we leave it up to them. They're the experts. We're simply instruments. And any good healer would tell you the same, that they are the instrument through which the energy is sent.
Right. And
Right.
it's also it's an open meditation, so you can do it for as long as or as short as you like.
Right.
We will sit and meditate for 30 minutes, but if you're, if you're after 5 minutes you've had it, then that's it. You can just get up and leave. And that's true for all of the Zoom groups that are doing this meditation together. And it's also true for any group that you might meditate with in person. That's the same. It's open. And just to mention about the Zoom transmission groups, you don't have to feel that your privacy is going to be at stake. You don't have to show your face. You can just be connected without your video on. So it's very open in that way as well. I think we're ready to start. Do you agree, both of you?
Yes.
Yeah. Megan, would you like to say the great invocation? We will turn off our microphones, but we'll say it at the same time. But we'll hear you saying it.
Okay.
Yeah. And after 30 minutes, we'll be back. Don't go away, and we'll see you then.
Okay. The great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And now we begin the meditation, focusing between the eyebrows.
meditation. And I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say, if this information resonates for you, please share it widely. Who do you know that would benefit from knowing about this story? Can you share this video with them? We'd really appreciate it. I would like to thank our tech crew, John in Montgomery, Alabama, and Cielito in Seattle, Washington, for your help. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be back on January 22nd to talk about signs of Maitreya's presence in the world. And that will be part 2 of a program that we started in November. So do come back and join us then. And thank you so much, Megan and Dick, for being here today. I had a lovely time. It was just great. And I hope you'll come back again.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. You know, John made a really good point in the chat about transmission meditation, and that is that it's free. It's always free, and it's done in somebody's home. Usually somebody hosts a group, you know, during non-pandemic times, and they get a little group of friends and they do it, 3 or more as a group. So, but it's always free. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.